Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between Michael K. Vaughan and myself, where we talk about comic books, comic book themes, characters, specific issues, and we do it according to what Mike wants to talk about. I horned my way into this feature on his channel years ago, and so he gets to pick what we talk about. And that has allowed me, over the course of all of these Epic Comic Book Wednesdays, watched by all three of you, to study his psychology from afar, to try to figure out what makes Michael K. Vaughan tick. Some of his choices are easy. Some of them are simple. If you were going to make, from the scratch, an Epic Comic Book Wednesday series, there are some things that would jump right out at you, obvious things that you would talk about, and some of those we have talked about. A couple of big ones we haven't, but some of those we have talked about. But then others just don't make any sense to me at all. And then I delve into them, and here's the point in the anecdote where you were expecting me to say, and then it all becomes clear. But no, it never does. It never does. He's just weird. That's all. So today is a perfect example. Today we are going back to 1939. We're going back to Detective Comics number 31 and 32, starring the Batman. And there's a famous cover. This cover has been redone, homaged many, many times. This is a two-parter where the Batman squares off against a supervillain called the Monk. And it has, I guess, Mike always puts his videos up. He does them, I think, the night before, so he always puts them up. I don't ever see them before I make my own videos, so I have to guess why he settled on this. Now, there's the obvious fact that Michael K. Vaughan has many dude bro elements to him, and this cover is worshipped by dude bros. They absolutely love Batman looming over a castle like this. But it's always going to be more than that with him, and I was trying to figure out when I was looking at rereading these issues why he would pick these. It's a two-parter. Batman had never had a two-parter before. Very few superheroes ever had a two-part adventure. In fact, I'm a little bit hard-pressed to think of one who did before this. To be continued before this in a comic book. So there's that. Also, another reason why he might have picked these is because this two-parter introduces a couple of elements to Batman. A couple of elements to the character. Some of the elements are fairly shallow. We get introduced to some sort of bat plane in these two issues. It's a bat gyro with echoes of Mr. Burns in The Simpsons. It's a bat gyro, but it is a kind of a bat plane, and much more importantly, the batarang, a kind of bat-shaped boomerang that Batman can use to obviously miraculous effect. That hasn't changed. The things that the Batarang can do are not allowable by physics any more than the things that Captain America's shield are allowable by physics. And also one other element is hinted at in the Batman's few previous appearances, but it's explicitly done in this issue. Let me see if I can get you the exact moment. I won't spoil the story. We'll go through the story. It's in the second part. No, it's in the first part. It's just a blink and you miss it thing. So, and hence I have blinked and missed it. But it is really interesting. It hadn't been done with Batman before. There's one point when he is using the bat plane, the bat autogyro or whatnot, to fly to the rescue of a damsel in distress, and he is terrifying the crowd in New York City. This is not yet Gotham City. You have this gigantic, ominous black bat shape against the moon, with this weird details in the crowd. Nowhere else, not another panel in these two issues, gets this kind of weird detail. Inept, weird detail. I want to stress right from the beginning how utterly inept these two issues are. There's nothing about them that's any good at all, except maybe in its bare bones the cover of that first parter. Just look at how bad this is. What is this person doing? What is that he's doing? And what is wrong with his face? Are those supposed to be whiskers? And why isn't this person looking at the thing that's frightening him? Uh, and if it's the middle of the night and this dark shape is flying across the moon, then why is someone selling papers? And so on and so forth. But when that happens, we get the blink and you miss it moment, which is Batman looking down at the fear he's causing and grinning just a little. And that's a world different from the Superman of the time, who had not yet transformed into the world's cop and the big blue Boy Scout, but he was still a little rough around the edges when it came to public relations. But he wasn't that. He wasn't sneering at the public by this point. He is initially, in a lot of his earlier adventures, he is sneering at the public, or at least the criminal element of the public, but not like this. That, I guess you could say, that accurately foreshadows how the best of this character will be portrayed. Not for the next 20 years after this issue. For the next 20 years after this issue, Batman is a law-abiding deputy of the Gotham City Police Department. Smiling, happy, appears in public in daylight often, cooperates with the police and knows them by name. But the heart and soul of the character doesn't have a high opinion of the general public. Will work to protect them, but doesn't have a high opinion of them. And I guess you could see that in that moment. But things like that, if those are the reasons why these were chosen, they're overwhelmed by the reasons why you should not read this garbage. We start with Batman patrolling the streets of New York City. He's apparently hopping from roof to roof. And in one panel there, I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out, he appears to have a sword. This Batman has no problem at all using guns. He's even on the cover of the next issue after these two. He's on the cover with a gun. But the sword never shows up again. But at one point, he goes from a roof to a wooden telephone pole with telephone wires ranging off it. Now, if you look around your streets in urban United States, you will maybe see one or two remaining wooden telephone poles, but you won't see anything like what they used to be. They used to be an ecosystem on their own. Massive cross-shaped wooden beams every 15, 30 feet with massive amounts of wires running along them. The thing that you can do now on an average urban American street, look up and see the sky with no wires in the way anywhere, no wires visible at all. The street where I live, for instance, looked radically different 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It had these things all over it. But it is, first of all, it is really, really dangerous. If you hop on top of one of these things, you can get electrocuted very easily. But Batman appears to jump from a rooftop to the body of a telephone pole, which is really, really hard to do. Weirdly hard to do. And he does it in order to abduct this man. He drops a lasso around this man this woman is approaching him, and he is saying, "Help, help." She said, "I've been sent by the master monk." She seems brainwashed. She's sleepwalking. Batman lassos this man and yanks him up to the top of the telephone pole, where he too would be electrocuted. First of all, this won't work. This won't work. This will not carry someone off the ground. Oh God. Oh God. All right. Let's we've had minor technical difficulties. The screen is actually functionally dark, which is kind of amazing. The screen is dark. The screen has gone dark. I don't have a print copy of this book, so you're going to have to bear with me while I somehow find the control for brightness and then put it all the way back up to where it was. No idea why. This happens every time I do this. No idea why it went all the way to the bottom. We're going to put it all the way to the top. And then when David Murphy is next over here, I will ask him how to lock it there. There must be a way to lock it there because this is an Apple product. But the point that I was trying to make is that this will not lift someone up without killing them. But anyway, this is a comic book we have to allow for a willing suspension of disbelief. He sits this guy on top of the telephone pole and tells him to stay there. And then he jumps down. That's 30 feet. He would break both his legs. But he encounters, he wants to know what's going on with this woman. Why he doesn't interpose directly. Why he doesn't just swing down between them. I don't have any idea. He's put this man in more danger than he was already in to begin with. But it's not just anyone that he encounters. He encounters this mind-washed woman and realizes it's Julie Madison, who is his fiancée. She's rather alarmingly called Batman's fiancée. She's Bruce Wayne's fiancée. And the minute he says her name, she wakes up and says, what's going on here? Where am I? Who are you? Why are you dressed like a giant bat? He gets in a car. Is it her car? Is it somebody else's car? It's not his car. He's been jumping around on rooftops all night. It's one of the million, there are literally a million details in these two issues that are simply not explained at all. Why does Batman intervene in this way instead of picking her up, for instance, if he's going to lasso somebody, or just intervening on the street? Why does he do that? What are the odds that he would be roaming around the city and encounter his fiancée? And why, if he knew she was hypnotized and was attacking people, why would he wait until she was an inch away from this guy in order to save him? Well, also, what happens to the guy? But we'll leave that aside. He leaves her off at her apartment. She says, "Won't you tell me who you are?" Which immediately kicks off the whole secret identity thing that had already kicked off a year before in Superman. The elephant in the room, the big elephant in the room for these kind of books. We'll say we won't mention here at any great length Clark Kent simply putting on glasses to convince people he's not Superman. This is no better. Take someone that you know and walk around with them, get to know them well enough to be their fiance, and then put them in a Batman costume. You're going to know immediately who they are. You're not going to ask, who are you? What's going on here? You're going to know. Her first question would be, who are you? It would be, Bruce, why are you wearing that thing? What haven't you told me? But she goes to Bruce Wayne, her fiance. No idea how fast she does, or why she's recovered. I mean, we're told that she goes to see Bruce the next morning. So she finds herself sleepwalking on the street about to kill a man. She's rescued by a giant figure of a black bat and brought back to her home with he appears to know where she lives. And she waits until morning to talk to her fiancé about this instead of, ringing Plaza 222 right away or just getting in a taxi and going to his home. They decide to go to the doctor. Something's clearly wrong with you. So they go to the doctor. And the doctor says, I recognize the effects of hypnotism. You were clearly hypnotized by someone to kill people. And what does he do? Does he alert the police? Does he, remand her to custody of a hospital or a psych ward or something like that? A manifest danger to the world? No, he doesn't do any of that. Instead, he makes a medical prescription. But the medical prescription is that she go on a cruise, which is actually a little bit accurate to the 1930s. If your doctor thought that you had the collywobbles but nothing seriously wrong with you, they would recommend a cruise. Sometimes the more grubby of them, the more successfully grubby of them, would recommend that they go along just to oversee your health. And there were rich people on Park Avenue where that worked. The doctor says that she should go to Paris and then on to Hungary, the land of werewolves. And he's got a glazed look in his face the whole time. Okay, that's kind of suspicious, but Bruce decides to do it. We don't get anything more about it. The next scene we get is Bruce in his big overcoat at a cruise ship line, booking passage for his fiancée alone. He doesn't book passage with her. He sends her off to Paris alone, at the behest of an obviously hypnotized doctor, to go to Paris and then to go on to the land of ravenous werewolves. This makes no sense. None at all. Bruce goes to a cruise ship line and sends her on her way with a transatlantic liner, but he's not going to abandon her completely. He's going to use the Bat autogyro to follow the boat as it crosses the Atlantic Ocean. Where is this thing going to get the fuel to cross the Atlantic Ocean? Where is it going to refuel? Where does he keep it? He keeps an autogyro in his living room? He keeps an autogyro in his warehouse? If he does, how does it take off? It's just a yellow square warehouse. But he not only shadows this ship at sea, which absolutely would not happen. The thing is, his autogyro is clearly visible. Everyone can see it. The captain could see it on the vessel. But he decides to set it on autopilot. That's not how autopilot works. But he decides to set it on autopilot and lower a ladder so that he can be with his fiancée. Why doesn't he go with her? Why? There is no answer to that question. She says, you here. But the point is, there would be 50 people on this deck. Everyone on the ship can see his plane that is hovering at equidistant length from the ship this whole time. And one person who's on board is the monk, the guy who's hypnotized her in the first place. She's not hypnotized now. No idea why he's not hypnotizing her anymore. Why did he hypnotize her in the first place? Did he hypnotize the doctor, or is the doctor just having, dipping into his own stash of LSD? We don't know. Nothing ever explained here. Never explained at all. How did the monk know to be on this ship? Was he following Bruce Wayne when Bruce Wayne made the tickets? Was he expecting Bruce Wayne to be there? Bruce Wayne makes the tickets and then Batman shows up on the very ship that Bruce Wayne's fiancée is on. No one puts two and two together. The monk doesn't put two and two together. He certainly knows who she is. Instead, he hypnotizes Batman up close. It impairs his aim, so when he throws his batarang, he misses the monk. And we are told the spell is broken. The monk evades the batarang. Batman leaps for the rope ladder. Anxious to get to the bottom of the mystery, he follows the ship and the monk to Paris. Paris at last, we're told. So Batman, now he knows that there is a villain here, the monk. He knows that the monk is capable of hypnotizing people because he hypnotizes Batman, and he hypnotized her earlier to kill someone. He knows that the monk is a terrible danger. The monk was trying to attack him. And he leaves her on board the vessel with him. So that he can get back to his plane. He leaves her for the remainder of the voyage. He leaves her alone with the monk. Which, a hero wouldn't do. He shadows the ship that she's on and that the monk is on all the way to Paris. Eager to find out what's going on, get to the bottom of the mystery of the mad monk. But once we get to Paris, he has to look for her. Why? Why does he have to do that? Do you have any idea how long it takes to debark from a passenger ship? A long time, many hours. Even if we dismiss the fact that everyone on the ship and everyone at the crowd at the docks in Paris would be looking at this bat-shaped plane, let's say he goes ahead and hides his plane, he would still have ample opportunity to watch them get off the ship. Especially if the monk's wearing that ostentatious red hood. Maybe he isn't, but he certainly can recognize his own fiancée. Why is he searching for her? How can he possibly not know where she is? And he's once again jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and sometimes on a car top. Until finally he finds the hotel where she is. Julie, at last. He's going to walk in there and figure out what's going on. He has left her in the hands of the supervillain. How does he know the supervillain wasn't going to kill her? Or tell her to walk overboard? He doesn't. He doesn't know anything of that. But that turns out to be not the only danger that he's left her in, because in the middle of this hotel room, before he can wake her up, he's attacked by a giant gorilla. And it knocks him through a sliding door and down onto a net that is suspended over a pit of venomous snakes in a cavernous interior of this hotel. What Paris hotel is like this? Did Julie go to it voluntarily? Didn't she notice the giant gorilla in her room? Also, that's not a gorilla, okay? That's a Gigantopithecus, which have been extinct for millions of years. So that's not, no gorilla is that size. But if it's in the room, if it was just standing there, why didn't it attack her? And when Batman falls out, slides through this sliding door onto this net, over these snakes, in the clutches of the villain, in a net, behind a steel trap or whatnot, what happens to the gorilla? We'll find out. He is caught in this net by the mad monk, who has suspended him over a pit of snakes. Just feast your eyes for a minute here on how horrible this artwork is. Bob Kane. I swear. He got work, but I do not understand it. He should have been shunted to the side as fast as Siegel and Schuster were. here we get the magical properties I was talking about of the Batarang. Batman throws it. He has no momentum. He has no ability to aim, no precision, no nothing. Like, even all this is in the basement of a hotel in Paris. But it still manages to knock the control for the net into the off position and also shatter a light that showers Batman with sharp shards of glass and come back to his hand. Unless it's radio controlled, that wouldn't happen. And even if it were radio controlled, very, very unlikely that it would be able to do that. Boomerangs aren't magic. But the Batman uses the glass to cut himself out of the net and climb away from the venomous snakes. The Mad Monk runs away. See, he runs away from Batman. Why does he do that? Why does he run away? He's able to hypnotize Batman. At point blank range, certainly, he's able to hypnotize Batman. Also, a little later on in the issue, no spoilers intended, we find out that he can transform into a wolf or a werewolf. And that he's a vampire. Vampires are 20 times stronger than a human being. Why does he run from Batman? Instead, he traps Batman behind a metal grate and releases the Gigantopithecus again, who's grown in the meantime. So it came down here too. How did it do that? That thing weighs at least 1,500 pounds. How did it do that? Did it kill Bruce Wayne's fiancée in the bedroom before it came down here? Did it rip her to shreds and maybe eat her head? Or did it come down here on its own, maybe summoned somehow by the Mad Monk? And if so, how did it? How did it get down here? It obviously didn't jump down or it would have landed in that pit of venomous snakes. But there it is to threaten Batman. And he uses the winch to get out of here because he has to pursue the Mad Monk. Obviously not caring that he's left a 1,500-pound Gigantopithecus in a rage in the basement of a Paris hotel. I could just see the headlines now. And when the winch is pulling him out of danger, he offhandedly throws his Batarang at the armed guard in a balcony. Well, if there was an armed guard in the balcony, then when Batman originally cut himself out of that net and went after the Mad Monk, why wasn't he shot? Why hasn't he been shot at any other point in this whole stupid death trap? Instead, he runs outside, and there is his autogyro, hovering over what now seems to be a house in the country rather than a hotel in the city, and the car speeding away. We're going to find out that the Mad Monk is not in the car. His fiancée is. So where is the Mad Monk? Well, I think you'd be right in guessing that the Mad Monk must have run out the door of this house, seen the ladder to the Bat autogyro and climbed it up, and he is now in the Bat autogyro, but no, apparently he ignores it. What is he doing? Is he hitchhiking across country? Is that what he's doing? Is this Detective Comics or a Shropshire lad? Where is he? How does he get away from this scenario? You are deliberately showing us that this thing is in the middle of nowhere. The monk is not in the car. Batman throws gas pellets into the car in order to cause it to swerve out of control. It rams into a tree at full speed. Julie survives, and he takes her to the autogyro, which has been following him the whole time, and says, "Oh, you poor kid, you've been through heck. At least I rescued you from the clutches of the Mad Monk. So what are we going to do? We're going to go on to Hungary, the land of the werewolves, because the crazy doctor told us to. It's not like we're going to disobey doctor's orders." What on earth? And we get to part 2, which is Detective Comics number 32, and shows you how early in Batman's history we are here, because this was still a time when Batman need not command the cover. That stops after issue 32 or 33. Here we have just the standard Detective Comics. Used to be about detectives, police detectives. So you'd have stoic policemen facing impossible odds, or here we have disarming a Chicago-style mobster with a Tommy gun. There's a later cover. I think it's the issue after this one. Actually, we can just page onto it. There's a later cover very soon after this issue that has someone on the cover who is not Batman and who is not, I think, properly identified anywhere in the issue. Yeah, this guy. Batman's still up there. His face is on the cover. But after that, I'm pretty sure that after 34, Batman is on every cover. But let's get back to our epic story, because they are moving on to Hungary, the land of the werewolves, which makes zero sense at all. Now, I've been saying all along that Michael K. Vaughan's psychology is difficult to plumb here. I don't know why he picked these two issues. I guess this is kind of a watershed in the development of the Batman character. Actually, I think I know why he picked these issues. We'll get to that at the end. But this might be seen as a kind of watershed, an attempt on Bob Kane's part to differentiate his character from the million other masked vigilantes that were that were exploding all over comics right now, right at this time in the 30s. I guess you could say that this is an attempt to create Batman atmosphere that later writers would capitalize on enormously. I guess you could say that. And if you do say that, you're going to be helped by what I believe is the single panel that got Michael K. Vaughan to suggest this. That's pretty effective. It's still poorly done. That's not where your legs would be if you're a human being. That's where your legs would be if you're a praying mantis of some kind. But it's still poorly drawn. But that is, what's the way to put it? That is a conception of a character. That's not just a drawing of a character. That's a conception of a character. It's just in its barest infancy here, so you don't get a lot of it. But that might be the reason, that one panel right there, that this is maybe in some way the birth of Batman, the character that we know. Who's not usually... Well, anyway, he is in Hungary. They have gone all the way. They've gone on to Hungary. Why on earth Bruce Wayne does this, when everyone he has dealt with has been in the thrall of the monk or has been the Mad Monk himself? Why doesn't he take her back to New York and safety, instead of obeying the instructions of an obviously hypnotized doctor? But instead, he is chasing this horse-drawn carriage. Here you get the Bob Kane is obviously just regurgitating a lot of Dracula, a lot of Bram Stoker's Dracula here. But Batman stops the carriage, apparently killing the driver, and finds out that there is someone on board. It's not his fiancée or the Mad Monk. Instead, it's a beautiful young woman whose name is Dala. And she appears to be a witch. But when it comes time for Batman to confront her, she slugs him unconscious with a statuette, a silver statuette. And he watches her go, but he chases her, and finally she exposition dumps. Let's get that exposition dump. "You'll talk now, Dala, you witch. I thought you were an accomplice of your evil master who calls himself the Monk, so you are vampires." And she says, "You want to know where the Monk is? You fear him. Well, I do too. I'll tell you where you may find him if you promise to kill him." Batman has not seen anything here that would indicate that these people are vampires. Nothing at all. And also, is it legal to kill a vampire? Well, this is a comic book, so it doesn't matter. He once again gets in his faithful autogyro. Where is he getting the fuel for this thing? I have no idea. But here we fly over, there's a full moon, of course. There's a graveyard. There are scratchy branch bare trees. And they are snared by a net. By the Mad Monk, who just hypnotizes Batman. He was always able to do this. He just completely immobilizes him. He even hypnotizes Batman's fiancée from a long distance to draw her to him so that he can have his masterly revenge. He will throw Batman into a pit of werewolves where they will tear him to pieces, knowing that his fiancée is going to be made into a werewolf, which I think means a vampire. We see this weird panel where the monk seems to be transforming into a werewolf himself, but it's just a wolf. And not a very big one. And he apparently puts out the call to other wolves to come and attack Batman. Batman tries to get out of this, but he can't quite hit his mark with his bat string just yet. So instead, he uses gas pellets from his utility belt to incapacitate this band of wolves that are coming for his throat. It's not how that works. Not in any way. Gas would need time to knock wolves unconscious. It wouldn't work on all of them at once. It wouldn't work on all of them instantaneously. And long before they went unconscious, he would go unconscious. But gas is magical in these stories, so it works just temporarily. He manages on his second or third or fourth try to get himself out of that pit. But he realizes that he is now facing vampires. Not people who not ordinary humans who put puncture marks on someone's neck or wear funky clothes. There's a scene in New York City where that is the minimum that you do to get in. No one's a vampire there. He decides they're vampires, and so he should kill them. And we all know the surefire way to kill a vampire, right? No, it's not with a wooden stake through the heart. No, it's with a silver bullet. Well, that works for werewolves. Are these people werewolves or vampires? No idea. But Batman might have lots of gas pellets in his belt. I guess when the gas wears off those wolves, they're just going to starve to death in that pit. Not going to go back home. They're just wolves. They're babies. They're wonderful. He doesn't have any silver in his utility belt, so he has to make silver bullets. And he does this by melting down the silver statue with a candle. It takes 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit to melt silver. I don't know if you have a signature scented candle on the bathroom stall right now, but it's not burning at 1,800 degrees. Batman could never melt silver with a candle. Even if he did, he wouldn't have bullet casts with him any more than he has silver with him. It would never happen. All he would do is warm the silver. He would never melt it. And if by some chance he had an extra hot candle flame, it would take him months to do this. Instead, it happens while you wait. He makes bullets, puts them in his gun, and kills the vampires. The end. He carts his fiancée back into his plane, and off they fly. Away from the hotel that's full of werewolves and dead bodies. Away from Paris, that has at least one hotel with a Gigantopithecus running around in its basement, and not to mention venomous snakes, all the way back to New York City. Where what is going to happen? Where what is going to happen? Batman is going to do what? What is he going to say to this woman? None of it makes any sense. It's all just horrible. Just absolutely horrible. But it's horrible in a very recognizable way. I read the first issue of this, and I was thinking, why did Mike pick this? Why are we doing this? We could be reading anything else. Jim Starlin's Dreadstar. Why did you pick this? And it was only when I got to the second issue, the end of the second issue, there's werewolves, there's vampires, you're making silver bullets by melting a statue with a candle, there's a magic net, there's hypnotism when you need it, and there's no hypnotism when you don't. What is all this reminding me of? What is all this stuff together reminding me of? I was reminding me of something, and then I realized, okay, take Batman out of the equation. And what have you got? You've got a pulp story. That's what you've got. Pulp stories are absolutely knuckle-draggingly idiotic in exactly these kinds of ways. That's why Michael K. Vaughan loves them so much. He is our king of pulp stories. That's why he picked this. It's not because it's a formative story of Batman. It's because it's pulp. This is a pulp adventure. This might as well be The Shadow. Although, The Shadow had an autogyro. That's just plagiarism right there. But The Shadow would have done a lot better in this episode, in this adventure. Think about it. The Shadow cannot be overcome by hypnotism. The Shadow cannot be taken by surprise. The Shadow he doesn't need to flee from wild animals. He can hypnotize them himself into quiescence. Never mind that Batman bungles this. Batman spends most of his career bungling things. He's not, after all, from Krypton. But that's the reason I'll watch Mike's video to see if maybe I'm right, but I firmly believe that's why he picked these particular two issues. Because they're pulp. This is a pulp adventure story, complete with all the dumb contrivances that he loves so much in his pulp stories. And then we move on to the next Detective Comics, and there you got Batman on the cover. So, where he's leaping off a bridge. That's not how you leap. That's not how you'd land. That'd be really, really, really painful or deadly to him. But here you get to the point here where the editors of Detective Comics are starting to realize that they had a winner on their hands with Batman. That no matter how inept the storytelling was, it was working. Fans were liking it. And Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as the saying goes. I may not be the biggest fan in the world of this character myself, but he is currently the only superhero character in either major superhero company whose weekly comic books actually sell. The industry will lie to you about that. The industry shill operations, the organizations that are designed merely to cheerlead the industry in exchange for access to free comics and interviews with creators, will also lie to you about that. But numbers don't lie. Spider-Man, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the Justice League, these things don't sell at all. They ship 2,000 or 3,000 issues to comic book companies who buy the consignment of those shipments, but the comic book companies don't sell them. They just sit there. Except Batman. Pretty much any Bat title will work. Now, there's an argument to be made that maybe the Bat titles are attracting the best talent. I have not seen that to be true. When I read them, I think it's just that this character remains just endurably cool. I think that's why in almost every major company-wide continuity revamp that DC has done, the directive from on high is leave Batman alone. Don't change anything. Not fundamentally. Don't change anything. It could be that is the case. And if so, maybe in this two-parter, we're seeing the beginnings of that. This is a crime fighter with lots of equipment, but he still cultivates a spooky air on his own. He's definitely human. He's not a supernatural being on his own. He's definitely human. He can be hypnotized. He will not be able to fight a gorilla and win. He gets in later issues, he gets shot and bleeds. That's all, I guess, the barest beginnings of the mythos of this character. Anyway, that's your Epic Comic Book Wednesday for today. We'll see what Michael K. Vaughan comes up with next week. Oh my God. Well, I had my hopes for all sorts of things this week and they didn't happen. This was interesting to go back and look at this, but Batman doesn't get good for quite a while after this. Until quite a while after this. Probably because he's not from Krypton. We've already gone over that. Superman was great by this time. But anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.